Good morning, good evening. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing, we wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you joining us today, we welcome you in. I wanted to do this for a little while, but weather and everything got in the way to actually have the full moonlight on one of my videos. Won't have it for long, it'll just make for an entertaining thumbnail or something like that. But indeed, this is why the Silverlight Show is named what it is, for the light of the full moon. Criminals go about their activities all times of day, but conspiracies, the paranormal, they do tend to happen more at night. Or do they? This is a source of contention for the paranormal community. Statisticians and scientists who have bravely tried to quantify the various phenomena say there's no difference when a full moon comes out. But when police, nurses, and doctors get together, firemen, they'll all tell you when it's a full moon, they're busier than usual. So is it possible that every policeman, fireman, ambulance person on the planet are all hallucinating and are all on edge just by the reputation of that silvery orb in the sky? Or is it because there's some magic to the full moon? I think there's some magic in that big old ball up there. First of all, the moon is a very unique place. It is gigantic in comparison to the Earth. It's about a quarter of the size of our planet. And compared to the other moons around the other planets, they're pretty tiny. The moon is about the only one that allows us to have an eclipse. It's the right size, the right distance, everything is perfect. So, and also, since the moon is tidally locked to us, we can have full moons with great frequency. We're kind of spoiled as far as a species. We're the only ones that were raised with a full moon, with lunar eclipses, and it's probably relatively rare, even if there are other aliens depending on your perspective, other species in the galaxy. We might be the only ones to experience this. That would be kind of neat. But what actually happens during a full moon? Scientifically, not much. The gravity of the moon is the same. There's a little more light reflected from the sun. But other than that, nothing changes. There's no difference in the electromagnetic fields. Literally nothing influences. But the thing is, humans aren't creatures of science. Humans are creatures. We're the symbolic animal. We are intelligent enough that our brains can reason through things, but we are still animals. We know animals get a little bit funny when the full moon comes out because it's more light than usual. It's exciting. Either you can hunt better or you need to hide better because there's that extra bit of light. And that's only for the nocturnal animals. The diurnal animals also tend to act a little bit strange. And humans, we're part diurnal, part nocturnal. Some of us are day people, some of us are night people. That's just the way that humanity has always been. But there's that certain something that we've always been fascinated by the moon. One of the reasons is because it's considered romantic. There's something that drives us onward. And in a lot of cultures, the moon has been portrayed as a female love goddess. Now, in a lot of cultures, it's the sun that's female and the moon is male. So that's not a blanket sweeping statement. But no matter what, the moon, and indeed most of the planets, are sexualized. Heck, I'm just going to... Now, it's a Saturday night, but I just want everybody to look there at all the apartments that are still awake and enjoying themselves. Since we are theoretically post-pandemic, at least for the time being, that means at about midnight, which is the time that I'm recording this, You still have a whole lot of people not willing to go to bed yet. They're not tired. They want to watch their movies. They want to play their games. They want to do a lot of other things too. They're living their life. And the full moon, it's nice. Probably some of those people with blacked out windows do have their lights on, or they have their windows closed so that they can look at the full moon. Probably not that we're seeing given where the moon is, but I'm saying, just because there's not a light on doesn't mean there's not people awake. Also, just because there's a light on doesn't mean there's people there. People still do leave lights on because they think bad things might happen. I'm guessing that's the 20th floor, 25th, somewhere in there. I'm not climbing up there to jump into any one of those people's windows. But there's people that would. Fortunately, this is a safe area. I don't have to worry about it. But the full moon, just by its psychic construct within our mind, with the collective unconscious placing the importance on it that we do, means that we are going to do things that we normally wouldn't. Whether because we're celebrating an exciting time or because we're extra superstitious. There's supposedly a way that you can put a glass of water in the moonlight for long enough and it will actually lower in temperature. Now, all the experiments I've seen on this, they've placed it by an open window, so yeah, it's going to be colder than the temperature in your room because generally people keep their houses warmer than the outside. Obviously not true for anywhere in the middle of summer. But even then, the outside temperature can be lower. Like my room temperature right now is about 18 degrees approximately, and outside it's about 16. So yeah, if I leave a glass of water, it's going to cool down, even if there's not a breeze blowing by or anything. But some people think, oh no, it's because of the moonlight, because the moon cools and the sun throws off heat. No, it's much less complicated. The sun generates heat, the moon reflects it. But you see, people want so badly to believe that the moon has supernatural powers, they believe that it can cool water just by being by a window. And you can go on YouTube, and there's going to be people demonstrating this, and they claim it's proof of all sorts of wild things, from the moon landings didn't happen, from the world is flat, etc., etc. The one thing I can promise you in this world is the moon landings happened. Do you know why? Because there were so many people that want to disprove it and have never been able to. And the number one person or people in the world that would have loved to have disproved the moon landings were the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union had way more spies than the United States ever anticipated. Even during the height of the McCarthy trials, the Soviets had way more spies around. So if the United States was faking at all, then there's only two possible explanations. Somehow the USSR and the USA were colluding, and they were working together to keep this big space race fabrication going. Now, logically, that does not make a lot of sense. I mean, they were ideological opponents at the time, and it would have made no sense for them to spend all the money just so they could spend more money. Maybe the United States would have gone in on something like that, but the Soviet Union was in it for the propaganda from the very beginning. They were trying to make as many firsts as possible, so to allow the United States a first, no, they would have shot that thing down. The only other logical alternative is that in the late 60s and very early 70s, we sent about a dozen people to land on the moon and brought them back. Not really surprising, but it's a very expensive proposition. Back then, money was an entirely different thing. The programs that went to the moon, both in the USSR and in the United States, were devastatingly expensive. Like in today's terms, we are probably not funding 1/10 of what we did back then if you work the money out to be the same. And that's where people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos come into place, because they are billionaires and they can afford a space program. And what are they interested in? The moon. That's why Jeff Bezos is trying to win these lawsuits against Elon Musk, because he's saying that he wasn't allowed to compete for the contract to land on the moon. Again, the billionaires are obsessed with the moon. And very simply put, his technology is not mature enough. Elon Musk has been doing this longer, and Elon Musk is now saying that he's going to be able to turn his rockets around within an hour and shoot them off again, almost as if they were airliners. We're not going to be a spacefaring race yet. It takes a lot more than one billionaire with lofty ambitions, and God forbid, one day one of his rockets is going to malfunction, and I hope everybody gets out alive, because then they're going to shut him down for a couple years while they investigate everything. And I don't want anybody to wind up that being their fate. But unfortunately, odds are it's going to happen. Rocketry is rocket science, and it's not perfect. We still send rovers off. We're putting the James Webb Space Telescope out there, and it's going to be in one of the Lagrange points, so that if something goes wrong with it, unlike Hubble, we don't really have anything that can get up there and service it. We'd have to custom design, build, and send a mission just to fix the mission that we already sent. It's rocket science. So, and even the Apollo programs, these are impressive because these things were done with slide rules and computers. Now, when I say computers, I don't mean those little calculator things that they carried on board the moons. I mean the original word for computer. Computers, back in the 50s and the 60s, meant rooms full of people, all sitting at desks, and all they did all day long was do math problems. That was their job. Math problems every day, every night. Now, to those of us sitting here in 2021, or whenever you happen to be listening, that sounds horrible. I mean, these people, and there were both men and women, the calculators were surprisingly egalitarian. Now, I don't know about the pay structure, but that might be an interesting episode to do. But when you hear them talk about computers, yes, they had electronic computers of a very basic sort. But generally, when they talk about computers back then, going to the moon, they meant rooms full of people that all they did was, today you're solving these 5 pages of equations. Okay, and then you go about your job, you do it, and hey, that's all good. Thank you very much. Silverlight's family has an 8-year-old that we're trying to teach math to. And trust me, I can think of a special type of hell where all you're doing all day is addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Don't need to think that hard. I'm living it. But that's the way things were. We were so determined to reach the moon to satisfy our intellectual and emotional curiosity that we were willing to spend that money to have people sit there and do math all day. Rocket science isn't just strapping big fuel tanks and, rocket engines on and playing Kerbal Space Program. No, you have to figure out exactly how much weight it's going to take. And once you put all this stuff on, how much payload can you put on top? This is why Elon Musk is doing a lot better than Boeing. Because Boeing is trying to recycle the space shuttle components into something they can use. Not a bad idea. But the space shuttle technology is literally late 60s technology. You kind of need to start from scratch. I mean, yes, it's using the same components, so it should be relatively easy, but the problem is, when you go to space, you can't just take the approach that you would with a car. You can't just say, I'm going to pop some new wheels on it, put a new Hemi under it, and it's going to be fine. No. You actually have to balance everything out. Because you're going into space. You don't have wings, you don't have wheels, you don't have any of that. You have what you bring with you. This is why the Chinese are making important strides. They're nowhere near the level of technology that the Russians or the United States has. But the same token, they've made leaps and bounds because it's exactly what the United States and the USSR were doing in the 60s. They went from one-person dinghies, for lack of better, because it's kind of literally a sphere that you're sitting in, and you were at the top. Whether you had the ability to push a button and make it rotate or not, it's irrelevant. You're still up there in a one-person capsule, to an Apollo, to a Soyuz, which is still being used today, whereas Elon Musk designed his stuff from the bottom up. So he was able to take advantage of all the new technologies. But the question is, look back at his motivation. Lust for the moon, and for Mars, and to go elsewhere. He has always said he is far more than happy to loan one of his rockets to NASA so that way they can go to the moon, because then he's going to be able to crow, I'm the one that allowed the United States to go back to the moon. Jeff Bezos would like that too, but his technology isn't quite there. And we're still all obeying that primal instinct that we want to go get the moon. We know the moon is not made of green cheese. We know the moon is not a spectral entity looking over us and judging our actions. We know the moon is there, is a circle, and it's undisputed. But the most important thing we know from our experience is that we're all attracted to its silver light. So, this night and every night, when you see that little orb up there, just remember, you can't help but notice it. Take your time. Take a look at it. It is beautiful. And humanity is lucky to have it, because our art and literature would be severely impacted if we didn't have it. Where would we be running to in space if we didn't have such a big, inviting target right next to us? The moon is our moon, and it is a beautiful moon. And that is why the Silverlight Show thanks you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this content, please like, share, and subscribe. And whatever happens, we hope you have a fantastic day.